Again, Coach Rozy here with Coach Rozy Chalk Talk. I got in-house today Coach Brady Muth. Coach is the head football coach at Yankton High School. How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing good. How are you? It's good to see you. I haven't seen you forever.
I know.
I miss you.
We've been hiding. We've been hiding out. Hey, for those that don't know you, just a little background of, I know you're from Yankton.
Yep.
But the process from you being a stud at Yankton, winning a couple state championships, school going through to where you're at now, being the head coach at Yankton. I know it's been kind of a journey.
Yeah.
Every coach has their journey. So you want to just kind of tell folks who you are, where you started from, and what brought you to our point we're at right now.
Yeah. So went to high school in Yankton and had a really good experience. Got to play for some really good coaches: Coach Hawk, Coach Miner, Coach Lickness, Coach Mitchell. Really benefited. I think one thing I always think I'm real lucky is that I get to play for my dad, which, you know, if you grow up in a house where there's teachers and coaches, it's kind of a blessing and a curse kind of a thing, because practice doesn't always get done at 6 o'clock. So there'd be times we'd be out in the backyard working on a pass set or working on a down block or things like that. But it's something I look back on, and I feel real fortunate that I was able to do that.
Right.
You know, went through the recruiting process. You know, when I was growing up, I was always kind of a runt. I wasn't the fastest kid. I wasn't the strongest kid. Definitely not the most athletic kid. You know, around my freshman year in Yankton, strength and conditioning really took off, and really got into that by the time I was a sophomore. And again, that was, you know, the school, we had an old Olympic, I don't know what, the Universal Gym.
Yeah.
That
the corner.
that Lalo Zato had donated, and it sat up on the stage, and that was our workout, you know. And I remember getting a letter from Coach Hawk, like in, you know, July, you better start doing your push-ups and sprints, and I was, you know, got into that. But by the time I was a freshman, they had opened up a weight room. It was kind of a cool place that's down on the corner of 2nd and I want to say Walnut, maybe. It's right, you know, right when you come down the mouth of the Old Meridian Bridge in the back. It was an old storeroom, and it looked like straight out of Rocky. Like you thought Mickey was going to come out, and, you know. And they tried to dress it up, and they painted it, but they only painted it like 8 foot high. So, and no air conditioning, no heat in the winter. We got one radio station, got the oldie station, and it was rust and iron, and it was, we had a lot of fun lifting in there, and really got into strength and conditioning there. And I think that's one thing that really kind of, you know, changed, you know, me as a football player. I lettered as a junior, and I felt really happy and fortunate to letter as a junior, and things were a little bit different back then. I mean,
right.
But you know, just tickled pink to letter. That was my goal. The only year I started, you know, I started my senior year, and that was it.
Right.
And so didn't have a whole lot of film or anything, but was lucky enough to get recruited. You know, went on some visits. Really fell in love with Southwest State and Marshall.
Yeah.
I kind of thought I was going to be, you know, in an education major. That's kind of what I thought, and they had a really good education program, and really loved the coaching staff there. But you and I know it, you know, if you're not like at the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world, those coaches, they change all the time. Yeah. And but I mean, I had as good of an experience, I think, as I could have. I played as a true freshman, and then blew out my shoulder at the end of my freshman year.
Oh.
And then kind of, that was a struggle. I mean, trying to get back from a rotator cuff injury, and you know, just problems with, you know, the cartilage in there and everything. And so didn't have the college career that I had envisioned, but I think that happens a lot to kids, you know. But I look back at that, and you know, where I think, you know, I really wish I would have been able to. I always think, you know, I wonder really, you know, how good I could have been in the Northern Sun Conference, and how good we could have been as a team. Didn't happen, but I did get to coach for 2 years. They gave me a choice: you can run the video camera, or you can coach, keep your scholarship. I looked at the guys that were videotaping, you know, and late October, November, I'm like, I don't want to be up there. So ended up coaching, and got to be coached by some really good guys, you know, the O-line guys that I coached with. I think about some of the guys that I ran into at Southwest and where they were at, just as they were kind of in a stopover in Southwest. Coach Bruning, who's a Vermilion guy, he ended up coaching when he was done, exploring college football at Elk Point Jefferson, and got to be, we were really tight when I was up in Marshall, but as coaching against each other, it was fun to coach against him too, and so just had a good experience coaching, and then finished my 4 years there, and I had everything planned out to. I wanted to be a college football coach, was going to go up to Concordia St. Paul and do my GA there, and had family that lived in the cities, and so I had this all planned out, and then I met a girl, and
those darn women.
Things got sidetracked. So I ended up transferring to Mount Marty to finish up and get my education, finish my education. Student teaching essentially is what I had to do. And, the goal was always, once I decided I did not want to coach, college football, my goal was I want to stick around here with Yankton being my target. You start to get serious in relationships and have children, and I think about where's a great place to raise a family, and I had a great experience here growing up, and that's what I wanted for my own family, my own kids, and so the goal was always here. And so I took the one job opening we had in the region, and Mount Marty does a great job with everything, and everything's real competitive. Sister Candy has up on her board, the jobs. Did you interview? Did you get an offer? Did you take it? At the time, she had like a checklist, So I wanted to be the guy with the most, interviews and offer checked off. And there was one job in the region, and it was at Wakanda for a social studies job. And I went and applied there and got offered the job and took it, and that's where I got my start. So.
Wakanda Gayville,
Vollen? At that time, we were Wakanda Gayville Vollen. So that was, I came in and Coach Buffington. I love the guy. He took me under his wing, and we kind of split duties. He took care of all the, as a head coach, all the paperwork and all that stuff. He took care of all that, and I took care of the on-field stuff. And I'll be honest with you, we weren't very good. It was a struggle, and you come in. I remember going in the spring, to have a meeting with guys, and here are our camp dates, and let's make sure we're getting in the weight room. And I mean, at the time, I was a 22, 23-year-old guy, and I was just like, I think about how excited I was, and I remember I had made, got shorts and T-shirts for everybody, so. We were all going to be a team, and we're gonna do things the right way. And I look back on those guys that I got to coach that first year, and man, I can remember waking up a Saturday and watching film with my dad, and just like, oh my God, I had never been exposed to the 9-man game before.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't realize the whole 45 rule, and so I remember Buff. I think we were up at White River, and they had some pretty good teams, and they were really fast, a lot faster than us. And we got done with the first half, or they were going in to score their seventh touchdown of the half, so it was 49-0. And I just looked at Buff. I go, do you realize it could be 200-0 at the end of this game? And he goes, no, that was after the first quarter. Sorry, quarter. 25. They scored 25 in the first quarter, and 49 in the first quarter. And I looked at Buff. I go, do you realize what the score could end up here? Like, do you really, Mike? He goes, oh, Coach, we'll be done at half. I'm like, oh, like I thought the 45 was. Oh, yeah. I just didn't get it. But we had great guys, and it was a great learning experience. After that year, that conglomeration with a co-op dissolved.
Yep.
And so then they went with Wakanda Gayville Vollen, Irene Wakanda, and I was in Wakanda for 3 years, and then ended up getting a job offer in Bonhomme, and Byron Pudwell, who, I look back on the guys that have had a real big impact, especially on my professional career as a teacher and a coach. Coach Pudwell is, he is a great guy. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about him, and had some success here just in the last couple of years. But he's one of the hardest working coaches I've ever been around, and I was real lucky to get a chance to coach with him. But when I was in college, Coach Lickness and I had gone over and I don't know if you want to call it install, but kind of help them through learning how to run the wing T, because Yankton was a wing T school. When I went up to Southwest, it was a wing T school, and we kind of transitioned to the spread, kind of just like what you're seeing everybody do now.
Right.
And went and helped them put in the wing T, and I don't know if that just stuck in his mind or whatever, but there was a job opening, and he called me and he said, "Hey, there's a job opening here, and I think you'd be a good fit. I think you should apply." And I applied, and I got the job. And it was that, I got to coach with, Larry Buffington and Brent Muchkinhouse and Irene, and then being able to coach with under Coach Pudwell. All those guys kind of let me do my own thing and just kind of figure things out and make a lot of mistakes, but figure things out. And I got to Bonhomme, and the kids in Bonhomme, they are some of the toughest kids that you'll ever meet, and they're pretty athletic kids, and they'll do anything for you. And after year one, we were running a wing T set, what everyone was pretty comfortable with, and I just looked at Coach Pudwell and I said, with the guys we have here, I'd really like to try, what we did at Southwest, where we were maybe a little bit undersized, but spread things out a little bit. And that was just the whole spread offense thing was just, it was just kind of getting started there. And I'm a big time football nerd where I'll read books and talk to people. And so I got on the phone and called some guys, got in touch with a guy down in Arkansas over email that ended up knowing Gus Malzahn, and he kind of walked me through. And essentially, if you look at Gus Malzahn and really those early guys, they're wing T guys. It's the same stuff. It just is presented differently.
Right, yeah.
And we have undersized guys. We want angles, and I don't want to bore everybody with the details. But I went to Coach Pudwell and I just said, I think this is where we got to go. Are you okay with this? And he said, "It's your thing, man. As long as you got it planned out and figured out, go for it." And
wow.
That takes a lot of trust from a guy. I was only there 1 year. We had some success, but I didn't necessarily come in with a pedigree that said you should listen to me. Right. And he let me kind of research things and develop things and kind of develop into essentially the offense that we run now, but it's real similar to what everybody else is running around here. So
let me ask you this, and then we'll get to bringing you over there. But as a coach, because that is hard, I'm kind of an old dog doing my thing. What do you think? I think that's what makes great coaches. But like from that standpoint of being able to open the door and say, "Hey, run your thing," and do that, that takes a lot of. You know what I mean? Like you have to have pretty good confidence in yourself to go, "I'm going to let this youngin' kind of come in and do his thing."
And I also think, from sitting at it on this side of the table as a head coach now, we've got some really, really good young coaches. In Yankton, there's been kind of a complete change where we had a lot of old veteran coaches, and you look around our coaching office, and there's guys that I coach that are now coaching, and they're young, but they're really talented, and they know their stuff.
So where do you draw the line, Coach? Let me ask you that, to say, this is, because you're comfortable and you have your philosophy and go, I'll open this up and I want to hear what you say. Where do you draw that line to go, okay, this is what we still, based on my philosophy, what I want to get done as the coach, this is what we're going to do, and how do you kind of let them be free, but at the same time, like pull those reins back just a little bit? How do you do that?
The big thing for me is I remember being told this when I was a young coach. One of my position coaches at Southwest said, when I started talking about coaching, he said, "You want to be a head coach someday?" And I was like, I don't know. I really want to be a really good position coach. And he said, "That's baloney. Any coach wants to be a good head coach. Or a good head coach. You want to be a good coach, you want to be a head coach." And I just thought, those are the kind of guys that I want around me. I want guys that are consistently challenging themselves and challenging their players, working to get better. And so, in my mind, everything works like an equation. That's kind of the way I see the world. So, if you want to do these things, you've got to prove it. If you have this in your mind, then you've got to do this to get this.
Right.
You've got to have things written out on paper. I'm a real visual guy, so I have to see, I look at a football field like a piece of toast. Right. whether it's offense or defense, do we have enough butter to spread across the piece of toast? So when if you can prove that to me schematically and you can talk through, and the other thing too is, how do you present it? I know a lot of guys that have a lot of good ideas, but then when they go to present it, if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
And that comes from making it your own. I think, I know I talk to a lot of guys, the staff at USD, I love talking to those guys. This new coaching staff that we've got at Mount Marty here, I love talking to those guys. The one thing I really try hard to do though, and I hope our assistant coaches do that too, is I can go and I can talk to you and you can say, well, this is how we do this. Okay, so what do you call that? Well, we call that, 12A. Well, I have to figure out if it's going to work for me in my mind. This is the way my brain works. I got to know how to translate that into my language, so that I can get that across to the players. I think there's a million great schemes out there. I think the biggest thing is, as coaches, how do we teach those schemes and how do we get it across to our players with confidence, so that they know that we know what we're talking about, and they're taking the right steps and they're in the right places and those types of things.
So now to move forward from Bon Home to bring you into Yankton, you open position opens.
And so my wife, my wife had a job here, and we were really at the point. So my oldest son at the time was a 6th grader, and we were really at the point where, okay, he's going to be a 7th grader next fall. Are we taking him to Bon Home, or are we leaving him in Yankton? And that's a tough thing to do, because he's got friends here. Selfishly, as a coach, I want to coach him, and I think to perception too. If I'm over there and he's over here, that doesn't look real good. What do I not believe in the program and those types of things? But I was pretty upfront with Coach Pudwell, and I'm a priority guy, and I just told him, if there's an opening in Yankton, I'm going to go for it. And he was really good about it. He was like, you have to. That's what you want to do. And was real supportive of it. I mean, and I'll be honest with you. So a job opened up here, and I got offered the job, and I took it. But it was really hard leaving there. You build, that's the thing with coaching, is you build relationships with kids and families, and then all of a sudden,
that's a sucky thing in coaching, right?
It was, I'm in my mind, I'm thinking about, like, we had our 2 off-season captains, and they came back to my room, and they were happy for me, and I was just, when I was talking to them, I just was sick to my stomach. We had some success. We had built some pretty good teams, and program was going in the right direction, and 11B is kind of a slaughterhouse. We were in the semifinals a couple times, and so we had some real success, some really good athletes, and so it was hard leaving that, because when I came in there 5 years ago, this was kind of the group. I said, okay, because it's easier to do that in a smaller school than in a bigger school, but I kind of had, especially these 2 guys I was talking to, I had them pegged like, these are going to be my guys. And to walk away from that was really tough, but it was good for my family, and it was it was a good move for me too, professionally. And so I tell people this all the time too. When I got to Yankton, my first coaching position was 7th grade football. It wasn't like, oh, boy wonder from Bon Home, here's the job. It wasn't that at all. And I was a tennis coach, and so that was a Bob Winter deal. He always says, if you're a good coach, you're a good coach. It doesn't matter. I don't know if he thinks I'm a good coach or just need a tennis coach, but I ended up coaching tennis for 4 years, and the guys that I coached tennis, it definitely wasn't Wimbledon out there. I remember something about saying blood and guts and twisting a knife or something. Their eyes got about this big. Like, we're not at the country club anymore, boys. So my son was a 7th grader, and it was fun to get to coach him for a year. And then I moved up to the high school after that. And, it was, like I said, it was a real fortunate thing. My dad was still on staff at the time, so it was fun to be around him. in that setting. And, again, I got to coach with Coach Lickness and Coach Mitchell, who now retired, but guys like Coach Shield, who just retired, and Coach Gross, and just a lot of really good older coaches. And then Coach Olson we came in closely. I think he was here a year before me, but we were kind of closer in age, so we really started to develop a really good relationship, and it's been really good.
So let me ask you, I know it's a good thing to be around those legends.
Yeah.
Right? And they're literally, what was, not to get on the name, but because you had to be a little scared being around some of those guys, and they knew you as a player.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sort of step in that situation to say, I'm the guy now that you can look. Because I always say coming back, like I said, you're a knucklehead when you go back to your hometown. You're an expert when you go 10 miles away.
Right.
Right? Like when you come back home, it's like, well, you're the player, and they can remember the knucklehead things you did probably in high school. What was that like from the standpoint of just kind of stepping back and learning, or had you had enough underneath your belt that with the respect from being your dad on staff? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Was there some negative with that you had to fight through, or was it?
I would say, Coach Lickness and I, we were both on the offensive side of the ball. So, and the one thing I do remember because Coach Lickness came in my junior year, and then my senior year was the offensive coordinator. We, changed from Coach Hawk's wing tee to the double wing tee, and there's nuanced differences in the way he did things, and so. But I remember the one thing that I've always I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but I love to sit down and look at scheme. And I can remember sitting in the basement of the old high school at the middle school, sitting with him after practice and walking through how everything worked on the field and blocking schemes and those types of things. And so, and and lucky enough too, when I went to Marshall, we were using the same system. So all of that was so ingrained. I mean, it's like speaking a language, so to speak. And so it did, that transition, I don't think there was, I don't want to say it was difficult. It was, I said, if there's anything that was difficult in any of that was probably me coming in, because we had enough success at Bon Home where I kind of thought I know how things run, and I know how, how to do things and a better way to do things. And the other thing too is, I've also noticed this as an assistant coach. I was a lot different than I am now as a head coach. I didn't have a hard time saying things, or especially saying things loudly as an assistant coach. Where now, when a decision is made and I know, it's my hide on the line, so to speak, I'm maybe a little bit more reserved. And I think Coach Lickness, there were times where I probably wore him out, but he was always really good to work with, and there are obviously some ideas about opening things up and stuff, and he was good about that. And so it was good to work with those guys. I look back on all the coaches that I've gotten to work with throughout my years and have coached under, and I don't know if you can take a better path to where you want to end up. Yeah.
So let me ask, so 7 years your assistant?
Yeah, 7 years as an assistant. Yeah, that's right.
So after
that first year, and then 7 at the varsity staff.
So 8 years.
Yeah.
So 8 year, I know Coach is talking retirement, to step into that position. I mean, because he's pretty successful.
Yeah.
Ran a pretty successful program. And what was your thought process? I know you and I even actually kind of talked about, as that was opening up, you and I had some chats about it. And
whether it's good or bad, my dad always instilled a real high sense of competitiveness in my mind, and so when I came here, that was my goal. Coach Lickness, and it wasn't a thing where I got here and I was like, okay, I'm here now, you got to leave. It wasn't one of those things at all. I'd had an opportunity to be the head coach at Bonham, and Coach Pudwell still wanted to coach, but he said, I think you're ready. When you're ready, you let me know. And I didn't quite know if I was ready to get at that level, from Wakanda Gave Ovalan to Bon Home, it's a little bit bigger jump, and didn't quite know if I was ready for that. I know that, sitting and learning, and one thing too, I think, assistant coaches, as they're getting older, they say, well, I could do this better. This is that I would do this differently and I would do this differently. But the thing, just coaching with Coach Lickness was, but these are things that were really good. These are still things that we still do. And, I can go all the way back to Coach Miner and Coach Hawk and Coach Jefferson at Southwest State and Coach Pudwell. And so, I think there gets a point in your coaching career where you're able to take all those things and kind of put them together where, I wouldn't say I have a specific coaching style. I coach like this guy, but it would be a mixture of all those guys that I've been in. And when I felt comfortable at that point, and it timed out real well, I was ready for it. I felt in my mind, and so it was, it wasn't a thing where, up to the point, the application process and the interview, I never was thinking to myself, man, what am I getting myself into? Until I got the job, and I walked out of the room, and I thought, oh boy, what did I get myself into? But no, there's no other place I'd rather be. And I had looked. There was an opening, I think, after maybe 3 years on the varsity staff. There was an opening up in Watertown that I had looked at applying to, but again, my son was going to be, a sophomore at that point, and I was like, oh man, I don't know if you can do that. So, stayed here, and this was my target. So
well, let me ask you this, because you kind of hit on that too. That there's Yankton has a pretty rich tradition. We try to talk about that all the time and building that in. That Max Hawk, and I remember Max Hawk when I was in high school. I went in Gayville, I'd come up and he'd help throw the shot. But so I knew Coach Hawk and then Coach Lickness and stuff. But that tradition, I know that's really means a lot to you in developing that. What did you keep that from some of those old guard, and then what have you put in place from building that tradition back? Because it's a different group of kids.
It is.
Kids are different now, because back in the old days of the Max Hawk and aren't like, this is what we're doing, and you say yes or no, sir.
Right.
And there wasn't a lot of questioning. So the process you've done to help, say this is what I want to do, because I know keeping that tradition is high on your list of what you want to build.
Yeah. So I've got a sign in my basement that says tradition never graduates, and that's true. Yeah. Tradition doesn't ever graduate, but tradition's not going to win you a state championship either. The guys that are there right now playing, they're the ones that are going to win the state championship. The thing I try to get across to our kids is you're really lucky and really blessed to play at a place where there's tradition, there's strong tradition, and we don't have to fake it. We show up and it's here. The one thing and this is why we try to cultivate the tradition and try to keep around a lot of these old things and the way we've done things for a long time, because tradition keeps you accountable. It keeps you accountable to what the expectations are at a place like Yankton, in a place like O'Gorman or a place like Sioux Falls, Washington. Those places have expectations that you have to live up to. And we try to make sure that those expectations and that accountability is in their face as much as possible. I know you've been up there, and I know a lot of people have been up there, but they might not pay attention to it. But when you walk out that back hallway, there's all those pictures of all those guys that have played there and had, pretty good careers and had success in Yankton. Well, we do that for a reason, and it's there so that when you're walking out, you're headed to the practice field. So that when you go to the practice field, you know that this is what is expected of you. Right. These are the expectations. And you're the one, when we always tell people, when you put on that helmet, and like people make fun, they had over the Corona thing, they had who's got the best helmets in South Dakota, and they had that nationwide. Well, I put our helmet up. I think we got the best helmet in South Dakota, and someone makes a smart comment about, Coach, there's no stickers on that helmet. There won't ever be stickers on that helmet, because that's who we are, and we're not going to change that. And so we always tell kids, you strap that red helmet on, you're signing a contract. You're signing this contract that you're going to live up to all this expectation, and you're going to be accountable to this. And when you're not, you're going to get called on it, and we're going to fix it. But the way kids are today, you're right, they are different. I'm not a yeller and a screamer.
Well, you used to be a little bit of a
little bit.
You used to be able to get after a
little bit. Now, like at practice, practice is a lot different. But kids kids want to be coached hard.
Yeah, right.
But, you know, when you get into a game, you know, I can remember, I'm not complaining, this is just the way it was, getting, you know, screwing up, Coach Hawk grabbing you by the face mask and letting you have it in front of, you know, all these people at Creighton Youngworth, and that's the way it was.
Yep.
You know, I don't know now, and especially the way we do things, we want to go fast all the time and not have people worry about making mistakes. And you know, you hear Scott Frost talk about no fear of failure. That's kind of what's been adopted here, you know, in today's generation. I'm not saying it's bad. I think it's a good way to approach it, but I think at the end of that, they still got to know that they're accountable for what is expected of them. You know, what we want to have a certain outcome, and you got to work to try to fix the mistakes. You know, that whole thing, no fear of failure, that's great, but you got to understand that if you make a mistake, well, we got to fix it now.
Yeah.
You know, understand that. And so I think that's maybe the one thing how what we've taken what's considered our old school at Yankton and kind of how can we get it so we can present it to our kids so that it impacts them. I think our coaching staff does a really good job of that.
So let me ask you this for now, because with the Corona stuff too, with expectations, because we're seeing it with some kids, you know, because it's easy, I think, easier to say, here's our expectations, and the reason we're holding you these expectations is because Friday night or this season. Well, you know, we're talking to some kids, and they still, you know, we're in the middle of June, and they're still wondering, say, well, Coach, what if, you know, like they're here training and working their heinies off. You know, it's 90 something outside, and they're running hills and stuff, and they're going, well, Coach, what if we don't have season? Like, what am I doing this? You know what I'm saying? They're asking. I'm like, and I'm like, well, in case that door opens, you got to be ready to go. And they're like, okay, I understand that, but trying to keep expectations, because sometimes, you know what I'm saying? It's, from our standpoint, we're talking as a strength staff, going, yeah, how do we keep kids fired up to go, hey, really push on these last 2 hills after you've run 15 of them. You know, to keep that drive and keep that high expectation. And
I think that's, and I know this is cliche, but that's where character comes into play, and that's one thing we try to cultivate is we want our guys. We know when they come in, you know, we see them when they're 7th graders and 8th graders, and they're just kind of developing a love for you know, school and sports and those types of things. They get to freshmen, they kind of turn a little knucklehead on, you know, things change a little bit. But one of the things, you know, we really try to instill in them is when you leave here, we want you to be a young man with high character. We want you to be a good husband, a good father, a good, you know, citizen in your community. You know, we obviously want you to be a good football player, but we're going to try to develop these, you know, these good human characteristics, and then the football player comes along. I think now, and that's what we'll see, you know, when we get more through the summer here, people that have really good, strong character, that's going to pull them through this. You know, that standard that we talk about, that's built in who you are and what your character is. And unfortunately, this is a tough time. I mean, this is not easy. You know, like you said, the biggest thing is probably all the unknown. You just don't know. And it's a tough, trying time. Well, that's when you see the character come out. That's when we're going to see who, you know, do we have the type of young men we want in our group, or do we have some work to do here?
We're just writing on paper, or is that we live in it?
Right.
Yeah. So let me ask, so what are you doing now? This part, we're in the middle of June. You guys have an open field. So you're able to have open field, kind of maybe tell folks, because it almost sounds like it's different. You know, like if talking to some buddies in Rapid, if you go to Minnesota, it's everywhere is kind of different. I'm like, it's hard to know what's going on because every place seems to have a little bit different.
Everything, and I would say, you know, if you want to talk about something that's challenging, that is the one thing that has been challenging. I think our school district's done a great job putting together a plan in place. You know, we took from, you know, the time that we kind of got shut down. Coach Moores has been, you know, getting everybody together. What's your plan of action, and bouncing ideas off of everybody, and so that's been really good. But that's been the one challenging thing is, you know, each place kind of has to come up with their own decision, which makes things more difficult in a real tough situation like we got right now. So we actually opened up for our you know, plan to play started this Monday.
Okay.
We are going to go, our football workouts, we're going to have our first one on Friday. And that, when we sat down as a staff, the one thing we talked about is this is our new normal. And so it's no different than when we bring guys in, you know, for our meeting, you know, before we start practice, we take them out to the field and we kind of show them this is how practice works. and we walk them through everything so they know this is what we're going to do. You know, this is the way the periods work and everything. So we're taking this first Friday. We didn't want to have any other distractions with, you know, open gyms, and we wanted to stay out of everybody's way so we could have our, because, I mean, if everybody shows up, there's 85 guys out there. It's a lot of people to be in charge of. And so just making sure everybody gets the right spot and going through check-in procedures and all of those things.
Right.
We're starting that on Friday. Once we get everybody comfortable with that and we're following all the rules, then we'll start to, we want to get to, we've got things laid out. Our coaching staff has things laid out in phases.
Right, yeah.
So our phase 2 is 2 times a week, drill work. And I think this is the big thing too. You know, a lot of other coaches I've talked to this, you know, people were like, well, you know, we can't use a ball, we can't throw a ball. I said, but this is a bad situation, but what about taking a bad situation and looking at it as an opportunity to get better,
right?
To do something good. So, you know, I talked to, we have a leadership council that we met throughout the whole thing once a week, you know, especially during the school year. Once they get off doing their own things in the summer, it was a little bit harder. But, you know, up to just last week, we were still meeting, getting things ready for our first interaction. And, you know, that was one thing I told them. I said, you know, guys, we go through, you know, we go to camps and we go 7-on-7 and everything is scheme. Are we running the plays right? Are we doing this right? And this is a little bit old Coach Hawk, Coach Minor mentality, but football is blocking and tackling. And a lot of it has to do with how good your feet are and your balance is. So before they let us put a ball in our hand and throw it to somebody, and that's the tough thing about football. I mean, the game of football, that's why they call it the best team game in the world, is I have the ball and I'm going to give it to you, whether I'm going to hand it to you or throw it to you.
Right.
I'm your teammate, I'm giving you the ball, and that guy's going to take the ball away from you. So it's all about the transfer of that ball. Well, until we get a better grasp on this, that ball's covered in germs, you know, and until we get cleared to go, this is a great opportunity to make us better athletes and better football players. You know, that's the way we're approaching it, rather than this is a negative. We could be doing this. No, we got an opportunity to do this and make ourselves better.
Yeah, I talked to a buddy in Wisconsin. He said the same. He goes, "What you're normally on a football field," he goes, "there's only one guy carrying the ball at a time or holding the ball at a time." He goes, "There's still 10 other guys that can do some stuff."
Yep.
You know, like footstep, like you're saying, footstep work. He's like, "Am I zone step right? Am I supposed to be, if I'm running a 10-yard out, am I going 10 or I'm going 8.5?"
Right.
Which change. You know, he's like, those are some things that I was like, oh yeah, that, you know.
Yeah,
from a positive, approach it from a positive.
And the one thing I really like about our coaching staff, Coach Olson, Coach Gross, Coach Huber, Coach Kolpitz, Coach Decker, Coach Savvy, and Coach Hale, the one thing these guys all have really done a good job of buying into is individual work and how important that is. Well, in our practice, and our practice is running at a pretty quick clip, you know, you get 16 to 20 minutes of individual work a day. We're going to get an hour. And I always think, you know, when we start to make strides as a team, I think individually we're getting better at skills. And so, you know, I'm excited for this. I know, you know, real lucky to have a great coaching staff. Like I said, you know, we've been sitting and bouncing ideas off each other. And it's been, I know, just talking with Coach Olson, he and I talk quite a bit. Coach Kolpitz, we're just really excited to get back on the field around our guys. That's, to be honest with you, that's been the hardest thing. It hasn't been the, I obviously I miss my own kids' events and things like that, but not being able to be in the classroom and see kids, or being able to see your team and be around them, that's been the hardest thing. So we're just really excited to get back on the field.
I know, just even coming in, 2 weeks ago when we get 10 kids in at a time, it's just like, there's kids in here.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And I think, the good thing is, I think it's, we're getting to a point, and I think Yankton, our school district and the direction we're doing it the right way, where we're going to get in there and we're going to see if everything's okay. And once we feel comfortable, and, that's the other thing too with this thing, it changes pretty quick.
Changes daily.
Yeah. We're in a spot where we can pull back, but just getting some sense of normalcy, I also think there's value in that too. And so it's good to get out.
Not to dig ourselves, neither one of us in the hole, but what do you see, or as it progresses? I've heard everything from there's going to be no sports for the fall to there might be only selected games. The process right now, and maybe you don't even want to get into that here, but What are you thinking process, or what are you kind of hearing as you talk to other coaches and around the state?
That's well above my pay grade, but
right.
But I do know that that's the goal. I know that every administrator I've talked to, every other coach I've talked to, I know High School Activities Association. The High School Activities Association is working as far. If you're following what they're doing, their board meetings and everything like that, they're working under the assumption that we're going to be doing something in the fall.
Right.
And so I think that should be comforting. They're the governing body. If we're talking about sports, they're the governing body in South Dakota, and if they're planning on playing, and that's what we're going to tell our guys Friday is, listen, they're planning on playing, and
right.
we're going to be planning on playing. If we get to that first game against Spearfish and they pull us off the field, so be it. But we're going to be ready to play. And again, that comes back to the character thing. This isn't about. And I pick Spearfish because that's game one. It's not about beating Spearfish. It's about us being the best we can be. It has nothing to do with our opponent. So that's a character thing. So that means we've got to put ourselves in a position and prepare and be ready. And I really like this group of kids we've got. The leadership over the summer, or even in the spring and the summer has been really good. We meet as a football team. We meet once, sometimes twice a month. Once we get through basketball season, we get in the spring, we're meeting just to go over things. Well, that's a lot of organization that just kind of got taken away. And I couldn't be more proud of this, our leadership committee and our assistant coaches for, doing a great job of making sure everybody's where they need to be.
Last question here. I know I've been taking a lot of time, but has your processing changed for coaching times, practice times? It's like, because I've talked to some people from a business and would say, man, I'm kind of changing my model of thinking we got to spend 3 hours a day. We got to have 2 hours of meetings. We got to have this. We got to be face to face. Has that process changed at all over the last 3 months? Because you see places maybe you can be more efficient, or maybe we were doing this all the time. Do we even need to be? You said, do we need to meet every day for an hour?
Yeah. So again, that's a good thing that's come out of here. The thing that we always tell our guys this too. But to me, communication. That when you leave here as a man, we want you to be a good communicator. Well, I think what this thing has forced us to do is learn how to be better communicators and to use the tools we have. So, for instance, we go through things like install where we're on the field, and there's value to that. We're not going to take that away.
Right.
But it's always real hard in high school to find time to meet because, there are times when we're lifting at 6 o'clock. Well, okay, so if we got a 6 o'clock lift, does that mean we're going to have a 5 o'clock install meeting? That's not going to work. And the kids got to go through 8 hours of school. It's not college where you can sneak off and take a nap for an hour and a half. Right. You know what I mean? And so, using the tools we have like Zoom and those types of things to install and get things to kids, we can still communicate with kids. Yeah. Because we're going to be limited. We can be around them for 50 minutes a session. So, typically when we get together, and we have a camp, well, we're not going to be able to go to a camp. There aren't camps.
Right. Yeah.
So using things like Zoom where we can sit down with a chalkboard in front of them and we can go through and say, this is the way things work, where we can't do that on the field. But I think there's a lot of value in that. And we weren't doing that before. So is that going to change the way we do things? It might have a pretty profound effect on how things go, as we move forward out of this. I don't know. Like I said, I think if and we've told our kids this, and we've talked about this as a coaching staff, but I think if we look at this as a complete negative and we don't try to find some positive out of this and make ourselves better, then it's gonna be a loss, and we can't afford that. So I'm like I said, I'm lucky to get to coach with some really great guys, and just looking forward to getting back with them and on the field with our guys.
Yeah. So I know we appreciate being part of the small part and being able to work with you guys, because it's been your staff's great and the school's great.
But that's when all this hit in March, you guys, I talked to coaches around the state. What are you doing? Because we had a great off season, and you and I talked about this. Might have been one of the best off seasons for strength and conditioning that we've had in a long time here.
Yeah.
And we had all this momentum going, and that's great. And so other coaches talking, what are you guys doing for strength and conditioning? I said, We got a strength and conditioning coach. He's got it taken care of. That app you rolled out, the way that all worked, I mean, that was second to none, man. I mean, everybody, we're pretty lucky to have you.
So. No, I appreciate it, but I mean, we're lucky to be able to work with you guys too. So last thing I'm going to put you on the spot here, Coach. How's the season look for? If everything, season goes normal, guys, and I know Guy, like you said, we had a really good off season. I know there was some, one of the kids today said, Coach, I'm a little,